Welcome back in, rolling through the program. Hope you guys are having fantastic Thursdays wherever you may be across this great country or this great land. Lots to get into. The NFL playoffs looming closer and closer. 6 different games, 3 on Saturday, 3 on Sunday. Knock on wood, it appears that the Monday national title game is still going to be played on as scheduled between Ohio State and Alabama, which means we have got 7 different major football games coming up to enjoy and talk about as we roll through the program. A lot of you wanting to react to the first hour of the show. We're going to be joined by Jeff Schwartz in the next segment to break down all 6 of the NFL games. Much to get into there, but I think we got a lot of different people who want to weigh in on phone calls and such. The OutKick VIP line up first. You can go become an OutKick VIP if you roll into OutKick.com. By the way, thanks for making this week the most read week in the history of OutKick so far. Appreciate all of you rolling in there. We're going to do in the month of January well over 10 million readers, which is just wild to think about. How many people are hanging out on a day-to-day basis on OutKick. And if you're not, and you want a website that I think is going to do a good job kind of contextualizing the day-to-day activities of the world of sports and more, OutKick.com is a good place to hang. All right, who's up first on the VIP line, Danny G?
Tyson in Daytona Beach.
Tyson in Daytona Beach. What you got for me, my man?
Hey, buddy. Good morning.
Thank you.
I just think that social media lately, it's just been such a distraction with everything in the political, realm of things in our society today. And I can't tell you how many times I think, it impacts our personal lives, because I got a 3-year-old and, they strive for attention, and he'll tug on my coattail, and my pants, wanting my attention sometimes, and I'll be, he'll catch me on my phone. And I have another little boy that'll be born here in March, and I just think, I think it's so bad, for just our personal lives, with everything going on, that we really get lost with the touch of what's really supposed to go on, what we're supposed to focus on. And it's so much negativity. It's very distracting.
Thanks, Scott. It's interesting you bring up the kid thing. Kids get attracted to toys. There are toys that are designed, if you have kids, I've got 3, toys that are designed to keep their attention. Video games, iPads for sure, the bells and whistles associated with them. They design the apps on social media to make us spend as much time as possible there. And we are being gamified in a way that I don't know that we understand. And that's why I'm saying 100 years from now, when they write the true history, or 80 years or whatever, after everybody who's lived through this era is dead, there will be a big book written that will do an incredible job. There'll be tons of books, but there'll be 2 or 3 that become kind of the default historical record of this era, right? That are the ones that are the most read, that are the most examined, that do the best job of contextualizing our time. And they will do such a great job of putting into context what we lived through. And I think social media is going to be a huge part of it. Because what social media, so I've always said, my grandmother used to say, there's 2 things you should never talk about in public: politics and religion. Because you don't ever know what somebody else's religion might be, and you don't, or strangers, sorry. 2 things you should never talk about with strangers: politics and religion. Because you don't know what their religion is, and you don't know what their politics might be. And it's just going to immediately put you on a foot of disagreement in some way. It seems to me that religion has receded in American public life to a large extent. I don't see or hear people arguing very much about religious-related issues, in my mind. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is a huge issue out there. But I don't see, different sects of Christianity. The Baptist and the Methodist aren't, feuding all the time about Church of Christ versus, Presbyterian, whatever denomination, Catholics versus, whatever the denomination of religion and Christianity. And I really don't see in American life today too much cross-denominational fighting, right? Jewish people against Christians, against Muslims, against Buddhists, whatever it is, right? It doesn't seem to me like there's that much religious conflagration in the country on a day-to-day basis. In this country, obviously other places that's different. But it does seem to me that everything has become political in the realm of social media. Everything is immediately doused in politics. Sports, all political. Everybody has to be political all the time, every day, all day long. Your friend from high school biology probably never shared a political opinion with you in your life when you were growing up. Now their political opinions are on your Facebook feed all day long, every day. I was looking at my wife's political, just talking with her about Facebook last night because I don't really spend any time outside of my profession sharing my opinions with anybody. I tell you guys exactly what I think. You can agree or disagree with it. That's my job. But I don't really have the desire to get on and talk with people that I went to school with 20 years ago about what their political beliefs are. But I don't remember them having political beliefs 20 years ago. Like, I had political beliefs. I was somewhat political in my high school. If you talk to people, they'd be like, oh, yeah, Clay Travis. I remember he worked on Bill Clinton's presidential campaign. He volunteered. Everybody knew what I thought. Wasn't trying to hide it. But almost no one that I went to high school with was political. Now, I went to college at GW. You go to school in Washington, D.C., you're more prone to be paying attention to politics than your average person would be. So there are a lot of people in college that had political beliefs. But I don't remember like this incessant politicization of everything. I mean, do you guys remember people being intensely political in your high school? Danny G, like, do you remember everybody being like super political? Maybe kids today are super political in their high schools. I don't know. And all everybody talks about is politics. But all the people I see and hear, like I asked my wife, I'm like, how many of these people that are obsessively posting about politics on your Facebook feed were political and when you were growing up? It's like, none of them. None of them care about politics at all.
Yeah,
now all they do is post political opinions?
No, I'm like you. I was going to high school and college classes in the early and mid 90s, and we were more worried about music and sports and girls. We were not talking about politics.
Maybe, do you think it's changed? I mean, I would be actually interested in hearing from young kids. Like, do they sit around and debate politics all day in high school classrooms now if they were actually in school? Dub, when you were in school, did people sit around and debate politics in your high school?
Not at my school, no. And I'm actually curious, too, whether or not, like, to what
like,
degree
when did
that's
that
changed.
shift occur, right?
Yeah, right.
Is it social media where people just feel compelled because somebody, like, is it the algorithm that favors political discourse and so people get so fired up? But I don't remember, like, all these people who are hyper partisan or even radicalized now. Like, they were totally chill when they were in high school. They didn't have strong opinions. Like, not to say that there's anything wrong with a strong opinion, but I'm just kind of blown away. Like, many of my high school classmates didn't vote, and now they're like obsessed on a day-to-day basis with every single thing under the sun all day long, and they're intensely and hyper partisan and political. It just, is it a social media shift? If so, can they shift the algorithm back to people just posting pictures of their dogs and their kids? Because whenever I get on social media, that's what I'm more interested in. I don't need to, I mean, maybe a lot of you out there are different than me. Maybe you're like, I wonder what my high school biology partner thinks about
the booty models are nice on Instagram.
Climate change. Right? Was it like, I did in my 9th grade science project partner, I wonder what they think about abortion. It's like, I really, no, I'm not sitting around thinking like, hey, I really desperately need to know what you think about the idea of, you know, whatever the most hot button issue is in the world of political thought. It's wild to me. I didn't know it when we were doing high school science projects. You didn't have any strong opinions about it. We had a good time. We hung out. And now, like, you're 40 and I need to know exactly what you think about the stimulus checks? I don't know. I don't know that I really feel the need. Like, I'd be interested in seeing your kids. I'm interested in knowing, what's going on in your life in a happy way. Yeah, and maybe Instagram's got the answer where they just put girls in, basic, it's like softcore porn. The entire model, it seems to me, for Instagram is pretty much softcore porn. I don't mind that either. What about you, Eddie? Like, you say you're not on Facebook, but like, do you notice that people you went to high school or college with who were totally non-political at all now obsessively post about politics?
Yeah, I am on Facebook, but I honestly don't even really look at the news feed or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I just go to my page.
I don't even know how to do that. Yeah. What do you do on your page?
I just post back when we used to be able to leave the house.
Yeah.
I'd post hey, we went to the game this week, or we went to.
It'd just be like a picture.
Yeah, stuff like that. I mean.
But I think that most people out there are kind of nodding their heads that when they go to Facebook, and again, I don't spend very much time on Facebook at all, but I am fascinated by it, that it's a large collection of people that otherwise had zero interest in politics, suddenly obsessively posting about politics all day long, every day. And I'm just kind of fascinated by what caused that shift in behavior. Why did it alter? And I think it's raised the fever temperature to a large extent, because I still think there's the vast majority of people are out there and I still think believe what my grandmother said, right? And it's a phrase that I think is such a cliche that many of you would have heard of, don't spend time talking about politics and religion. Like, in the same way, there aren't people out there, I don't think, constantly sharing their religious beliefs all the time and telling you have to believe what they believe religious-wise. I mean, maybe that's happening on a regular basis. I don't see it as much. And I was thinking, the other day, this idea that everything is so political, in many walks of life, it's actually a huge turnoff. And I was thinking about this because I was like, I need to go to my dentist. If I got into my dentist chair and the dentist started to look at me, and I've got now a girl dentist, right? Woman dentist. And before that, I had a guy dentist. If either one of them, so when I say he or her or whatever, if either one of them starts to work on my teeth, and if my current dentist, she was like, hey, I just thought that you needed to know what my political opinions are in order to be comfortable coming here to this dentist. I believe X, Y, and Z, and I wouldn't care at all what her political beliefs are, because I'm like, hey, I just want you to make sure that my teeth are okay, right? Like, make sure I don't have any cavities, clean them. And I would be held hostage while she was cleaning my teeth. And if she was like, well, I just think, when you're making a choice about who you go to get your teeth cleaned by, you need to know what I think about abortion, and you need to know what I think about balanced budget, and you need to know what I think about Donald Trump versus Joe Biden, and you need to know what I think about Kamala Harris versus Mike Pence, I would be like, oh my God, I can't, she's got me held hostage. I can't get out of here. And I think most of you out there would be like, yeah, why in the world would I want my dentist to be while I'm trying to get my teeth cleaned, sitting there telling me all their political opinions? And yet that's what sports has become. Right? I was kind of having that analogy as I was sitting there, you're sitting down in front of your television watching sports, and meanwhile you're getting lectured by athletes about things that have nothing to do with what you have chosen to consume of theirs. I just want you to clean my teeth. I really don't care at all about any political opinions you have. If you're good at cleaning my teeth, I'm going to keep coming back. If you tell me, hey, this is the dental office that wants you to know all of our political opinions, I'm going to pick a new dentist, because I would rather have a conversation with my dentist about almost anything rather than sit there while you're cleaning my teeth and you just run me through the litany of your political opinions, because I can't even talk back. I'm just being lectured to. I'm fascinated by this idea that everything is intensely political now, and you have to share political thoughts all day long, every day, even in things that have nothing to do with politics, because I think it ratchets up the overall temperature. And by the way, I'm on Twitter during the commercial break, and I talk sometimes about how wacky the world can be. When I was a kid growing up, I remember watching George Karl, the head coach at the time of the Seattle Supersonics, Gary Payton, Sean Kemp. They lost 4-2 to the Chicago Bulls. George Karl tweeted me overnight, "Hey, Clay Travis, your words and behavior helped enable the BS of today." And I'm like, why is George Karl, first of all, obsessed with anything that I said? Secondly, do you really think if you read OutKick or listen to this show or read my Twitter feed that I'm somehow making the world worse? It's really kind of fascinating to me. Not only do so many people out there in the woke brigade object to anything that challenges their worldview, but they also demand acquiescence to their worldview. It's weird that we've gone from people who claim to be the most tolerant won't tolerate any opinion that's different than theirs. It's really, really wild to think about. We got calls, I think, people who want to weigh in. Do we still have somebody on the VIP again?
Another VIP here, Kim in Indiana.
Kim, what you got for me?
Hi. Thanks for taking my call and being the voice of reason today. One thing I do want to say is I missed you a lot last week, so I listened to your podcast a lot. So anybody that wants to hear more of you should definitely check that out. But what I wanted to say for social media, for me, based on my profession, I work in the mental health field, and I have a business page and a personal page on Facebook. And I'm trying to, one, obviously draw people to my business and to try to help and inspire others. So mine is more of a positive outlook versus the negative. And I think what you are saying today is right on, and I think that's what people are missing, is that if you can be motivated by something outside of yourself, then that obviously means internally you have a lot of work to do. And I don't think a lot of people are self-aware enough to realize that that's what's actually happening to them. So anyway, I want to thank you for taking my call. I hope your son's tonsil surgery went well, and I hope you have a very happy new year.
Thank you.
Take care.
Yeah, my 12-year-old got his tonsils out on what today is. Every day rolls together. It's hard to remember. It's Thursday, right? My son had his tonsils out on Tuesday. And so my house has been a little bit of, and the kids got remote learning now this week. It's been a total chaos here. But do you guys get my point on, like, can you imagine, like, I don't think we're that far away from where, like, you get in the seat to get your teeth cleaned and your dentist is, like, telling you all their political opinions, right? Like, I just, like, the idea of that, it just, I'm like, I would almost rather get a cavity filled than have to hear my dentist regardless. Like, I've had two good dentists. I like them both, guy and a girl, over the past, 15 years of dentistry. And we have a good relationship and everything else. And I like talking to my dentist and, like sitting down with them. But the idea that everything you do, even if it has nothing to do with politics, is now hyper political, it seems like it's taken over the entire country.
I think you asked us a good question during the last break. If it's that we have a little bit of a platform to vent sometimes.
So we don't feel the need.
Right.
Does anybody, like, I'm curious on this. Does anybody on this show, on their personal Facebook page, share strong opinions at all? Just quickly, Danny G.
Never.
I don't have Facebook.
Never.
Okay, like, what about you, Dub?
I don't think I've ever been serious on Facebook once.
Yeah, what about you, Eddie?
No.
Okay, is that because we're different than some of these people sharing strong opinions? Or my question was, is it because we have a forum to share our opinions and so we don't feel the need to share any other opinions outside of what we do for a living?
See, it's a good question, because if you've ever had a lapse between radio jobs, which I know you've had before because of contract situations, you kind of feel like a fish out of water because you're missing that little bit of stage you had to vent or get things off your chest or talk about things that are going on. And if you didn't have that, I wonder if you would use social media differently.
I don't know, but I will just say this. I never have, right? So professionally, I have this platform and I share my opinion. It's my job. But privately, I don't have any desire to, and I don't even know how many, and I'm just using, like, I'm trying to distinguish between myself as a professional person and myself as a personal person, right? Privately, I don't have any desire to go into Facebook and share my opinions with people that I went to school with or whatever else. If they're in the audience and they want to hear my opinion, they can. But my presumption is that in their private life, they don't want me just showing up and catapulting in like cannonball style into their social media feeds, obsessively sharing every opinion that I have. Now, my kids or whatever, like, that's different. But it's fascinating, right? Like, I distinguish, I guess, between professional and personal, but I'm my honest self on the radio and on TV and everything else, saying exactly what I believe, and I think that's important. But I wouldn't show up at a Christmas party and be like, "Hey, everybody, gather around. You have to hear my opinion on this." Right? Does that make any sense? Like, and it seems to me like there are a lot of people out there on there, and I don't know if that's because maybe I'm sitting around and like I share my opinion every day. For instance, my wife has said that the reason why I don't have need therapy or need to talk to psychologists or psychiatrists or anybody else, and there's nothing wrong if you feel the need for that, is because I get 3 hours of daily therapy every day, because I have the luxury of being able to sit down on a microphone and say exactly what I think. And then at the end of the show, I have like no weight on my shoulders at all. Like, there's nothing I'm hiding. There's no opinion that I'm running from. There's no like fear that I'm not being able to say what I think. And maybe that's why I don't feel the need on any kind of social media profile, that's my private world. But it seems like so many people do all day long feel the need to be intensely political. Like, if you sat down and your dentist was like, "Hey, I'm going to tell you what I think about abortion for the next 20 minutes while I clean your teeth, and I just think it's important for you to know," would you be like, "Oh my God, like what is the world coming to? I really don't care. Maybe that's arrogance. Like, I don't care." But it's not like, I feel like that's where we're going, right? It's like and I was thinking about how ridiculous that sounds. Like, hey, you're going to show up at your dentist, you're going to get in the chair, you're going to have your mouth open, and your dental hygienist is going to be like, "Hey, I got to get some things off my chest. I really want you to know what I think about the stimulus checks." And you're there and your mouth's open and you can't escape, and like they're working on you. She's like, "On the one hand, I kind of like the idea of the stimulus. I'm going to talk to you about what I think about lockdowns for the next 20 minutes. And you can't choose whether or not to be there?" That sounds miserable. But I feel like that's where we're going. Or your mechanic, like, you're going to show up to get your car fixed, and like you're sitting there in the waiting room, and the mechanic's like, "Hey man, can you come out here for a minute?" You're like, "Yeah, sure." And instead of like pointing out something that's wrong with your car, by the way, whenever the mechanic points out something that's wrong with my car, I always pretend that I know what he's talking about. No idea what he's talking about. You ever stand beside a mechanic when he pops up your hood and he's like, "All right, here's what we think is wrong with your car." Because sometimes mechanics want to explain, because they're like, "Hey, I want to be forthcoming." They might as well be speaking Greek. I have no idea what they're talking about. No idea what's under my hood. I know the engine's there. That's about the extent. I know I have tires. I know nothing about cars. But what if your mechanic called you out and he's like, "Hey, I want to talk to you for a minute." And you're like, "Okay, he's probably going to tell me what's wrong. I need a new, I don't know, wire inside the car." And he's like, "Hey, I just wanted to talk to you about Black Lives Matter." And you're like, and by the way, probably be a white guy. And you're like, "What?" He's like, I just thought it was important while I worked on your car for you to know what I think about the Black Lives Matter movement." What? Like, no, I just want you to fix my wire thing in the car. I want the car to start to work again. But I don't think we're that far away from like your mechanic calling you out. And he's like, "Hey man, sit down in that chair while I fix your car. I'm just going to tell you what I think about this latest political issue of the day."
Man, I want to work on your car. Clay, your wire thing is going to cost $5,000.
Yeah,
to
right.
fix.
I'm like, "All right, here's $5,000. I have no idea.
I'll
That
get you a new
thing,
wire
the wire
thing.
thing's not working. You're going to have to get a new wire thing. All right, I whatever you need to do." I don't have any idea. Does that seem crazy? It sounds crazy but I feel like that's where we're going. Like where everybody's just like constantly talking and sharing with you things that you have no actual interest in at all, and it has nothing to do with their jobs.